Ding! It's No Name Cinema Society. It's our classic of the night, episode 29.3. And we're here to talk about Johnny Belinda is our classic of the night. Hello, folks. I am Jonathan Betzler. I am one of your hosts, and Sexy Pirate Night continues either fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. I think it's unfortunate for me, slight eye injury, hospital band. Just catching you up if you haven't been with us the last few episodes so far this evening. And I'll tell you what else we've done this evening in a second. First, I want to introduce my co-host. Obviously, we're talking about Johnny Belinda, which is about a deaf-mute girl. Unfortunately, J Money is not mute, and nor does he have a lower third. Their lower thirds have mysteriously broken. Is that weird?
Broken. Yeah. Well, I am a deaf girl, though, so at least...
Well, I mean, you wish you were after you hear my reviews of these movies. Davey Joe, and this is Drunk Davey, our other host of the evening. How you feeling it's going so far, Davey?
I don't know. It's been better.
Really?
No, we're doing all right.
Wow.
See, I mean, I was going to challenge you to find out which, I want to find out when it's been better. I guess when I've not had an eye patch. Here's what we've talked about so far tonight. So we've got Pop Star was what we started out the evening with, a current feature just released this past weekend. And we just finished having a really long and intense discussion about Melancholia. Now, when I say long, I don't mean you shouldn't go watch it, because it was like probably 25 minutes, but we went a little over because we got really intense about it. Wouldn't you say, guys?
Yeah, we got into it. Hell yeah, we did.
Hell, there it is. That's the J Money I know and love. Right about now, it's just after 9 in Eastern, 6 in Pacific, and we're going to talk about Johnny Belinda. And our last show of the evening is our freeform segment where Davey whines about stuff in Davey's diatribe. I'm going to do a top 5 Best Actress winners of all time, and that's inspired by this movie because Jane Wyman would win Best Actress Oscar in 1948 for her performance in this film. Sorry, I forgot to start the timer, so we might run late again. And on the podcast, in terms of the trivia, and that's time for our fun little tidbit alert. The trivia on the podcast was this is one of 4 Oscar-winning performances for performances that did not have any dialogue, wordless performances. And do you guys happen to know what some of the other Oscar-winning wordless performances are? And Jean Dujardin does not count?
No.
How many movies about mimes are there? Sorry, how many Oscar-winning movies about mimes are there?
And that tells me that they don't know. So I can tell you that one of them was in 1970. John Mills won Best Supporting Actor for David Lean's Ryan's Daughter for a wordless performance. Marlee Matlin, of course, in Children of the Lesser God in 1986. And Holly Hunter for The Piano in 1993.
Yeah.
Wordless performances.
But no Lassie? Lassie got robbed, man.
Lassie did well. He barked a little bit.
Does that count?
But I guess so did Marlee Matlin. The other tidbit was on Facebook, and it of course, it may not of course, you haven't seen it, but the trivia question on Facebook was this Best Actress winner could have been Flotus, which of course is First Lady of the United States, which I hope would have led you to. Jane Wyman, who was married to Ronald Reagan between 1940 and 1949, and so if they hadn't been divorced and Ronald Reagan, stayed on his path to be president, Jane Wyman could have been our first lady. So that was the tidbits there. You guys feel good about the tidbit alerts?
Yeah, good job.
Thank you very much. It's time to talk about the movie itself. This is Johnny Belinda. The story is based on a play, which in turn is based on true story, actually. Young Belinda here is a deaf and mute girl, as I intimated earlier. A new city doctor moves into their small provincial island town in the east coast of Canada. He befriends Belinda and realizes what most of the uneducated townspeople don't, that there actually is a brain inside this young woman. He takes her under his wing to teach her how she can communicate with the rest of the world, though it's possible Belinda was better off remaining ignorant of the nature of the world around her. So that's the summary. And Davey, you get to go first with opening thoughts.
Yeah, this movie was kind of a surprise to me because I had never even heard of it. So it was a pleasant surprise. I enjoyed it.
He didn't use any of the buzzwords for Davies scale, so I can't
Might have
bring
done
up.
that on purpose.
What's that?
You gotta. This gives you, you gotta figure it out. You gotta jam it in there where you think it fits best.
Well, I guess. Well, I mean, color palette's not going to play into this black and white movie, I presume. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna. Do we go? We go here with are we third straight good movie? Think that
Yeah.
would qualify?
Is that a good or is that a solid? It's hard to say.
I don't know. I'm asking him.
Well, I mean, let's see. I guess I'd go good. I probably would have gone solid on Popstar.
You had your chance.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, it was good. It was good. It was a good movie.
Okay, well now we know. We can go back and re-edit Popstar so that it works better. J Money.
Too bright.
And for those of you that don't know, that's a reference to episode 27.3, Davey whining about the Lion in Winter. So you can check that out.
I loved the movie. I make one criticism. Too bright is all the way on the left.
Your opening thoughts on Johnny Belinda, J Money.
I wish I could say I liked it more than I did. I guess for me this is a fairly middle-of-the-road, mediocre movie. There were certain aspects that I really appreciated about it, but there was a lot of things that detracted for me as well. So.
Well, I guess we'll unpack that in shortly. Obviously, if you watch the show a lot, you know that all the classics I screen beforehand to an audience either in New York or Los Angeles. Over the years, I've actually screened this twice. The first time I ever saw it was as a part of a screening at the Oscar Movie Marathon in 2008, which I did in New York. So it would have been February, I'd say I wrote it down, February 21st, 2009. And that was the first time I had seen it. Obviously the audience that was there as well, it was their first time. And and the audience that day all really loved it that first time. I even bought it, and it's out of print. Or out of print's over here. I even bought it. I was so excited by watching this movie for the first time. So I screened it again September 24th of 2015, this past year, here in Los Angeles, here in this very room, and I felt a little differently about it. I didn't remember it feeling as it was flawed as it was. I mean, there are things that I still really enjoyed about it, and I would say that the audience that was with me had mixed feelings as well. The discussion that we had got bogged down into, like, we had a long talk about definitions of melodrama, what qualified as a woman's picture in the 40s. Strangely enough, the men responded very favorably to it. They were compelled by the story and the performances. The women found it flawed and heavy-handed. Personally, I'm inclined to agree with both, in the very own way. So the first thing I want to talk about is the screenplay itself. Where are you guys on the plot situation? Anybody?
I mean, I liked the plot. I kind of was more I don't want to say impressed, but the teaching her and seeing her kind of progress, I found to be pretty fascinating. So I thought that what ended up happening later on, with her being attacked and how that kind of unfolded, certainly was more sort of a visceral reaction. But the court scene was sort of cringeworthy. So
Now,
the plot
what do you
was,
mean by cringeworthy?
oh, I mean, come on, it's just like, how about when the doctor just starts testifying while standing there?
Right.
Oh, I see. So you're saying from specifically a very legal perspective, you had some issues.
Oh yeah, I did, but I thought that the stuff in the beginning was so strong, and I thought the stuff all the way up through really the climax of her kind of saving her child, was so exciting. So I thought that the plot was good. The story was excellent, but it's kind of marred by maybe the final act a bit.
Okay, interesting. Now, Davey, not Davey, J Money. I imagine you're going to have some disagreement with this.
Yeah, I think for me, I thought that there was a lot of really meaty ideas to the premise of the movie, but it didn't really it didn't unpack them. It didn't really want to explore them in a way that felt relevant to the material. To me, they sort of glossed over a lot of the bigger struggles and ideas in the plot, and they also, in a sense, handled it all very naively. Now, I don't know if that's
No, hold on. Are you saying that the filmmakers handled it naively, or the characters handled the situation naively in the story?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't know if I can actually answer that. I guess I feel like.
Well, I mean, it's a true story.
Yeah, but so is it an adaptation from a written true story, or is it
it's based on a play, which is based on a true story? I said that.
So the play was based on the true story.
Correct.
Huh. I guess I would say that it seems like it was very watered down to be presented to a general audience.
Well, I was going to bring this up earlier, but it was the first film ever to have a rape in it.
Yeah. I mean,
even to suggest that a rape. So in that sense, way ahead of the time.
Well, part of my struggle with watching this movie was that I kept saying to myself, I understand this movie is bringing up a lot of really important social issues that probably are not really addressed. I mean, on one hand, rape, certainly that's a really large part of it. On the other hand, disability, that had to have been a really large part of it.
I have that towards the end here. You're way ahead of me, but yeah, no, for sure. Go ahead.
So for me, it's like I keep struggling with being like, I don't know if I'm just reacting to this too much as a modern person. I don't know if I just feel like there's a lot of really
you normally don't have that issue. You're usually able to compartmentalize.
Usually I am, but I think in this case, I feel like because this movie was, to me, so much about those symbolic ideas that I just couldn't get past it. I couldn't get past that. Everything felt like a vehicle to explore that.
Did you say symbolic or symbiotic?
Symbolic. I feel like this movie was very much about exploring, those ideas, and because of the way it was handled, I couldn't get into it from that point of view.
So, I mean, don't want to spend too much time, but I'm fascinated. I don't understand what you mean by didn't want to get into it. No, I guess I want to say is, you talk about how they handled it. Like, can you be more specific?
Well, I thought that it was just incredibly soft. I mean, I don't feel like there was any kind of sense of realism to the character's struggle. So I don't know if that's more about how it was written for the characters or if it was more about the direction.
Or that could be a time period thing. You know what I mean? Again, I certainly feel like they were handling the feminism and rape aspect of it like they were very cautious about.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, it's embarrassing by today's standards how they treated it, but even so, I understand that at the time it was very important. So I'm having a hard time. I'm trying to separate myself, just in terms of where I exist, in this time period.
Yeah,
it's funny because that's not normally your issue. But Davey, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that I thought that the rape scene was actually, I mean, as kind of muted as it was, I thought it was scary. I thought it was just the amount of reaction that they were able to elicit out of me with just really one really good shot with the shadow like that.
Boom! Right on cue! I nailed it!
Yeah, I mean, in the shadow kind of gets to about half of her face, and then the scene cuts, and it was, I thought, I mean, it was scary, and it was
it's funny because that actually almost word for word came up in our screening in this past September. That especially the men were the ones that reacted very favorably to that and how it was handled and that it was very effective, especially for a first time. It's almost it's like the old saying goes, it's like it's almost scarier the less you see. The more that's left up to the imagination that people talk about all the time. Spielberg talks about that all the time, and I think there's truth in that.
Yeah. Let me. Can I clarify just quickly? I don't have a problem with this scene itself. I don't have a problem with how they shot.
No, I don't think anyone thought that.
Oh, okay, just so we're clear.
No, no, no. I think Davy Joe was just changing the subject because he didn't know.
No, no, yeah, I think that you know, given that it was, I'm sorry, it was 1944. Is that the
48.
48.
48? I think that since they probably couldn't do an actual scene like that, you know, and put it out in the public, you know, something like that has never been done. The way that they did it was, I thought, pretty chilling and pretty effective.
Now, I don't want to talk too much about this next topic because it created a whole conversation at the screening, but I do want to get your opinion on it because it created a whole conversation at the screening. When I introduced the film at the screening, I mentioned it. I called it a melodrama but like the word has a negative connotation today, and maybe that's connected to what Jay Money's issue is. Would you guys, like, first of all, would you call this a melodrama? Would you agree that this is a melodrama?
Yeah, I definitely would.
And is that a bad thing?
Well, you know, it's a bad thing if we evaluate it in a modern sense, but I don't think it's a bad thing inherently. I don't have a problem with the idea of melodrama.
Right. I mean, that's sort of where I am on that. David, do you have anything on that?
No, not really. I think sure it is, but I that's, you know, it's a film that's fine.
I mean, there are melodramas that I really like, and I don't hate Johnny Belinda. I think I like it maybe the most of anybody here. I mean, Imitation of Life is another example of a melodrama I really enjoy. I mean, I'm sure we'll come across other ones that we review over the next few months. It did veer into heavy-handed because it's also an issue movie. You know, it was called a woman's movie, it was called a weepy, and it was called an issue movie. And we already talked about the two issues: handicap rights and you know, rape / women's rights. So, you know, but it did have some heavy-handedness. Namely, there was a town meeting, if you recall, that I found to be particularly offensive, and at least in the lack of subtlety with which the characters addressed. And I mean, like, and I watched a lot of movies from this time period, and I felt like this was more of a fear of the audience not getting it, or that this is the writer and director beating people over the head, instead of, I mean, it you know, that was not necessarily about the time period. That was not a time period in terms of the time period the movie was made. That was not a 1948 issue. That there were lots of movies in 1948 that had a little more subtlety than that town meeting scene. And the other issue is the actual ending itself was really awkward in terms of the rapist, quite frankly, and like just not being very bright in you know, in that whole thing, wanting to see the child. I don't want to give too much away. I'm trying to tiptoe around it, but those are the things that really bothered me from a plot point of view. Anybody?
Oh, it's almost like they didn't have the time or the desire to kind of build a mystery, so they just had him just kind of admit guilt. You know, and unfortunately we lost Jay Money, but
I see that. He didn't like the movie anyway, so screw him.
So I think that maybe there was some lack of creativity there, maybe just a little laziness, or maybe they were just kind of, maybe that's how it really happens too. You know, it's hard to tell when something's based on a true story.
It felt really awkward and forced, and that was one of the things that really upset me upon a second viewing. And watching it again, I didn't remember it that way. I'm like, that's what happened? I don't remember that at all. I do want to segue to performances real quick, and I hope Jay Money can get back in time. Let me know if he texted you.
He texted me now, and I'm reading it now. I see. Are you guys still going? Yes. Continue.
So he thinks that he's back.
He's back.
Jay Money, you joined just in time for us to talk about the performances.
Excellent.
So obviously Jane Wyman won an Oscar. I am going to agree with that. I think she's radiant. I think she's super expressive without doing too much. I mean, especially for the time. Like, I don't think that she really overdoes it. You know, a lot of times you see in silent movies they overdo it, and by 1948, I think she's pretty subtle in her work here. Davey, you're nodding, so I'll go to you first.
No, I thought it was really it was a great performance, and I'm I'm glad to hear she won the Oscar. I hadn't looked that up, so.
Well, it was part of the trivia for last time, so thanks for paying attention.
I don't.
First of all, I do it during the broadcast, and then it's on Facebook.
Yeah, thanks for checking in.
The whole show is his idea, ladies and gentlemen. Jane Wyman.
Yeah, I'm going to struggle a little bit. For me, I felt like her performance and all the performances in this movie were very flat. I mean, very one note in a lot of ways. I think that she did a lot of things.
They were all nominated for Oscars.
I'm sure that they were, because I feel like this was a movie that would have definitely been in the Oscars. I mean, I think that even if they made it now in modern times, it seems like Oscar bait to me. This seems like some of the most original Oscar baity movie.
So I mean, like, there's one performance I have an issue with, but I mean, like, and we'll get to that in a second. But Jane Wyman, really, like, you really struggled with her?
I don't think that she, in any sense, realistically represented the idea, like the trauma that was happening to her. Do I think that she was good for this movie? Yeah, I think that she was good for this movie.
Like, bear in mind that she, like, it's not a deaf mute girl in New York City in 2016. It's a deaf mute girl, like, in a remote island village in 1940. I mean, I think the movie takes place even before that. So, like, it wasn't just that she was deaf and mute; she was completely oblivious to the ways of the world.
Well,
so she's a complete child in that regard.
Well, yeah, but I don't think that would. I don't think that excuses like a Pollyannish attitude that she has throughout the entire movie. I mean, I think that you would still see some more.
I do actually. I do think that it explains a lot of the choices.
I think that if somebody suffers a traumatic incident like an assault like that, it tends to show up a little bit more, stronger than in this situation.
She did.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, I sort of interpret it as sort of a blocking out situation because it has a tragic consequence, doesn't it? I mean, like, she lashes out eventually, doesn't she?
Briefly. For me, it's like she stays pretty straightforward and one note the entire movie. As most of the characters do in this movie.
I disagree with the Jane Wyman thing, but Davy Joe, real quick.
Also, she withdraws, and they can tell they think she's sick. They don't know what's wrong, and the doctor has to see her. So I mean, it's not. I don't know. I mean, I feel like.
Well, yeah, they show her reacting to it, but it's like 5 minutes of her peeling a potato, and then she's fine again.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if is that performance though, or is that just direction in writing.
And I don't know that she's fine again. Like, I don't know. I mean, like, I read a lot more in that performance. One performance that I thought was pretty stiff is our old friend from All Quiet in the Western Front. I don't know if you recognize him from All Quiet in the Western Front.
No.
But he's the main guy in All Quiet in the Western Front, which is a movie
I did not recognize that at all. That's amazing.
We reviewed in episode 13.3, if you want to go back and look at that.
Yeah.
This is Lou Ayres, and he, to me, is very one note. That's the exact words I'd written down, and stiff. And you know what? This is the kind of character he plays all the time. Movies like Dark Victory from 1939. This is like his in his years past All Quiet in the Western Front. He was the mustachioed like hero, that noble, smart guy. You know what I mean? Like, this was something he did a lot of. And he was a problem in the movie for me. Do you guys have anything on Lou Ayres here, now that you recognize him?
I mean,
the mighty have fallen.
He was kind of the typical scientist in the old movie. There's always a guy like that, and the flying saucers are around, and they bring in that guy to kind of explain everything.
Well, yeah, this is even before the 50s B movies that you're thinking of.
But he's kind of that same feel, though. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but
I do. Davey, J Money, you have anything on Lou before I get to the next one?
Nothing that we haven't already said. He was. I guess I would agree with you about this one entirely, JB.
Well, that's nice to hear, because now I've got another one that I think is terrific, and one of his best performances, and in a long career for Charles Bickford. And this is one of his best performances, and I think he's super naturalistic. Like, I think he's really, really strong here. As I actually forget, he's a father, right? Isn't he her father?
Yeah, you know what? I stand corrected. He is definitely, to me, the standout performance. Him and probably the woman that plays his sister, Agnes.
And that's the other one that I think is awesome. And this is Agnes Moorehead, who plays Agnes. Who you might recognize as the mother from Bewitched. if you
yes.
if you want to go back that far.
Wow.
One thing I will add about Agnes Moorehead is at the end of every year at the CMSs, I think Jay Money, you might have gotten this email, but I don't think you actually voted. But I have people vote on their favorite performances and films that I've showed over the course of the year. So throughout 2015, and this performance by Agnes Moorehead was voted one of the top 3 performances that I showed supporting actress performances that I showed last year. So. She's terrific. They're both terrific. They're veterans, and she was nominated for supporting actress. Many, many times in the 40s. She's tremendous. And Davey Joe, where are you on Agnes?
I know. I thought she was great. I thought again, maybe kind of a writing thing, but she really turns on such a dime. But I don't really
think so? I mean, I think that it builds in terms of what happens with her, like her warming to the idea. I think it builds, and I think that's part of her unpeeling the layer of the character as an actor.
Well, she gets. I mean, here's the thing: she gets some pretty crazy news, and that's what changes her. So I mean, it's believable to an extent. It's just. I don't know. I felt like maybe they could have handled it a little better, but has nothing to do with performance. Performance is fantastic. So.
And Jay Money, do you have anything else you want to say about the performance?
Well, I guess in general, these 2 characters are really the only performances I saw any real personality. I think that's probably part of my issue with some of the other stuff we're talking about here, even in terms of.
That's what I think is so good about Jane Wyman's performance. That I feel her personality through her through her expressiveness and her silence.
In fairness, they were given the ability to talk.
This is true. It's like cheating.
I think they're great. I mean, like obviously, I'm a big fan. Like the performances, except for Lou Ayres, are a standout for me, and also all the other supporting performances are pretty. Like all the flat characters are pretty weak for me, but Bickford, Moorhead, and Wyman I think are terrific. Like really, really good, and in a small way ahead of their time a little bit. I think that they're pretty. They're believable people in a 40s movie.
I mean, at least the Oscar audiences of 1949 agreed with you.
Well, they were all nominated. Only Wyman won. Only Jane Wyman won. The rest, the others lost. I mean, Bickford had the unfortunate situation of having to go up against Walter Houston in Treasure of the Sierra Madre, and that's a tough one to beat. So at this time, the buzzer went off because I wanted to talk about the themes, but we did talk about them briefly. Is there more we wanted to talk about in terms of handicap rights and I mean, I think we agree it's handicap rights and feminism are the 2 themes. Is there more to unpack here, or did we cover it?
No, I think we covered the themes.
We did. I mean, like, and you felt like you wanted more edge. Is that fair to say in terms of putting words in your mouth?
I don't know if edge is the right word. I guess I thought that they were handled a little bit clumsily and naively. But I also, again, I'll acknowledge it's one of the first times you see them on screen. So it's about the growth of that. I don't want to. I mean, like, I'm
not going to fault it for that. I think. I think that is a product of the time, and I actually give it props for daring to try. I do think that there are some scenes, like I mentioned that one scene that was heavy-handed. Would you guys call this a feminist film?
I would call it a feminist film for 1948.
Okay. Because, I mean, that was another big discussion that came up in our screening, so I'm curious where you guys land on that.
I don't think it wouldn't pass the test today, but I think that it was certainly a step in the direction.
I mean, like, the women in the audience were actually very angry at it. And
for some good reasons.
Well, I mean, like, I agree, but I'm curious what you are defining as good reasons.
Well, I mean, the first and foremost would be the fact that, like, the rape is really the smallest. I mean, as much as it's sort of, characterized in this terrible way for that one scene, it's almost entirely disregarded later on. Like, it's.
Well, she also had no way of telling anyone what happened. Like, I mean, like, granted, it's been 6+ months since I've seen it, but I mean, like, doesn't it go for like 2 reels or 3 reels before anyone realized what happened or who did it?
Well. I mean, there's a couple. The main characters realized pretty early what happened and who did it. But I mean, the rest. I
mean, like they realize she's pregnant, but is that early or is that like I thought that's a while later?
It's It's not too far later. Like it's because she's upset, right? And
So I mean, remind me. I mean, I don't want to give too much away for the audience, but remind me, like, once they find out, like, there's no effort to like find the rapist or whatever. Right? Is that?
they actually rationalize it by saying it would be bad for us to go after him because that would only make the situation worse. Which that's not really gonna fly in today's culture one way or the other.
No, but I can understand that rationale in that island town in 1948.
Yeah, but I think that's something that a lot of feminists rallied against to get to the point where we are now.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, like, I don't necessarily think that the film is promoting that idea, or like, I think it's promoting that is what these characters needed to do at this time.
That's the point, and I think it makes it's kind of draws attention to how horrible that was. Their reaction is kind of kind of played up as part of the problem. Not, I don't think it's casting that in a good light at all. I think it and then I think
every once in a while Davey says something really bright, J Money.
And later on when chips are down, she picks up a gun and takes care of business. So I don't know.
But she only does it as a like it does it to frame her as a mother. Like all of her actions comes across in framing her in this sort of domesticity.
That's fair.
As opposed to the actual act of being raped, which doesn't really figure into this as much as it probably should, considering
that's fair. And that's a good point.
I mean, whether or not it promotes them sweeping it under carpet, that's not.
Well, I told the people in the screening, and I still feel like I'm not saying that the film deserves a pass. I think it needs props actually for even to broach, to start to broach that, start to crack that nut a little bit. I mean, I think it's the start of a discussion at a time when it was not really talked about, and certainly not in films. You know what I mean? Like, and even just to unlock that door for cinema is important.
Yeah, but you're asking why women that watch it now might be upset.
I'm not asking. I understood what their point was. I'm just saying I just wish that they could put it in historical context.
Huh.
So I have 2 minutes left before we have to get brackety. So here are the remaining topics that I have. I've got direction, editing, and cinematography. We sort of touched on direction, but not really. I see you pointing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get a chance to say what I liked about this movie.
Oh, okay.
This movie was the cinematography.
Any of those things, direction, editing, or cinematography?
Cinematography. I mean, visually, this movie was great. Visually, I really liked this movie quite a bit.
Okay, so that's what we get to talk about. Why? Tell me why.
I really loved some of the way that they were setting up scenes. I really loved there you go. There's a great scene there. I mean, the lighting in this, the cinematography in this is astounding. We were talking about the shadow and the rape scene. I mean, there were so many really impressive just ways that they orchestrated everything, visually that I really reacted to. I mean, that was to me the thing that saved it for me, just in general.
I mean, it's I mean, like, sometimes I just wish more things were shot in black and white. This is gorgeous black and white cinematography, just luscious.
Yeah.
Davey Joe, how'd you feel about the color palette?
Get a lot with those two colors, man.
Well, it's all about the shades. That's the trick with black and white cinematography. It's all about the shades. Anything else to tell me? How'd you feel about the cinematography, Davey?
No, I thought it was great, and the scene that stood out is the one we already talked about, and I don't think you could do that in color. I just don't think it would have the same effect.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. So yeah, no, I think at least it's something we all agree on. I mean, like, it's some, and I think the cinematography is one of the things, and the editing is another thing I liked a lot as well. That I think elevates it from just being this eye patch is not staying in the right place. It elevates it from just being another run-of-the-mill melodrama.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, the performances I liked a lot, most of them, but.
No, the visual style of this film is what makes it stand. Like, it gives it an extra point to, I think, make it be noticeable.
I don't remember the cinematographer's name, but I can, or maybe it's right here. But I do want to give some we didn't talk about the director at all. His name is Jean Nagulsko, mainly known as he mainly did women's films or films about women or like this. He was famous for being a womanizer, so the fact that he mainly did women's films, I don't think that's what he intended to be, because he was known as a bit of a man's man, womanizer type. Cinematographer is not listed on this. I'll have to look that up another time, but I do want to at least acknowledge his name because we haven't talked about Jean Nagulsko at all, and I have some issues with some things that he did. Obviously, we talked about some of the things we didn't like in some of the scenes, but I wanted to at least say his name because we hadn't yet. I'm going to move on, guys. You good?
Yep.
Good.
It's time for the showdown. Time to get brackety, as I said. The classic feature showdown. I was thinking that, J Money, if you want to put your glasses on, maybe you should show Davy Joe how this is done with the rules.
Wow.
Do you feel like you'd rather he did it?
I mean, I'm also illiterate, so it's kind of up to Davy Joe. I can stumble through it if you'd like me to.
Hey man, it's you do it, man.
All right.
All right.
I'll do it.
You can put your glasses on, and I will, and we'll do the rules. Take it away.
Hey, rules for the classic movie showdown. Number 1, seeding criteria varies from bracket to bracket. Number 2, films at JB hosted screenings need to be 15 years or older, parentheses 2001. Number 3, voters are eligible if they see both films within a 12-month period. Hey, I can't see it now. Where'd it go?
Oh, really?
It just switched. Oh, there we go. Number 4, voters must see both films in JB's presence, which is omnipresent, I believe. Number 5, JB is ineligible to vote, but he breaks ties and hearts.
You started to get good at the end there. I don't know about the numbering of the rules. That was maybe longer than I had hoped. All right, so we got the 40s bracket going tonight. What's that, J Money? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Just trying to buy you as much time as possible.
Oh, I see. I appreciate that. I didn't need that much time. But anyway, 40s bracket is what's up for tonight. And sorry, my eye keeps roaming because it's the only one I got right now. So we got 40s bracket, and here is the matchup. We've got Johnny Belinda is a 12 seed, and it goes up against number 5 seed, For Whom the Bell Tolls, which is a film directed by Sam Wood from 1943, as it says there. And Sam Wood, you might remember if you saw the movie Trumbo. The character of Sam Wood is featured in the movie Trumbo in a non-nice way. He's sort of an anti-Trumbo figure. Towards the beginning of the movie, for those of you that remember Trumbo. He's depicted ignominiously. And the other famous thing about For Whom the Bell Tolls is Gary Cooper and Ingrid Bergman, by the way. This is adapted from one of Hemingway's most famous novels. I will also say that it was the year of Casablanca, so and very famously Ingrid Bergman was nominated for this instead of Casablanca, so very famously and controversially because she's. But also, this did win an Oscar for the Best Supporting Actress. This is Katina Paxinou, a Greek actress that not many people had heard of, and she's not that remembered now. But I will say, I just talked earlier about Agnes Moorehead's performance being remembered as in the CMS poll at the end of the year as the 3rd best. This performance, in spite of its age, was actually listed as the best that people remembered from 2014. In the 2014 poll I did, they remembered this performance by her, this Greek actress in For Whom the Bell Tolls, and she didn't really focus on her acting career after at least not her film career. She did a lot of stage work, particularly back home in Greece, as I recall. So anyway, did you guys watch this movie for this discussion? Yes or no will do.
Yes, I did. I mean, you can thank Regal. Thank Regal for breaking their theater for me to be able to take the time to
yes.
movie.
And it also helped me to have an extra day with going through my eye stuff.
Right.
Davey, did you watch it?
I did not.
What do you have to say for yourself?
I feel horrible. I'm shamed.
And what so you should, I need you to apologize to the viewers.
Yeah, I just don't remember you being this hard on J Money when you didn't watch Henry Rums and.
It's because I always lied.
All right, J Money, what was your impression of For Whom the Bell Tolls?
I guess I would say it was also for me kind of a hit and a miss movie. There were things about it I liked. There were things about it I didn't like. So.
Can you get into? You have a second to get into more detail.
Okay. Some of the performances were, to me, a way too ridiculously caricaturish. Some of the plot kind of dragged a little bit for me. I think there were times when it was trying to be a little bit more grandiose than it could pull off. I think it was really full of itself in a lot of ways, which I think is, Hemingway in general.
Yeah.
I think Gary Cooper is great as a really quiet, tough guy, but I think when you put him against these two incredibly vivacious women, he felt really at odds to me. I mean, I think that Ingrid Bergman and Katrina, that's her name, right?
Katina, no R.
They carried the movie in terms of the acting ability. Both of them kind of worked out better for me. So, there were times when I was definitely kind of just unimpressed and not really that, intrigued by what was going on. And then there were times when it all kind of came together well, and some of the soliloquies were really kind of impressive and interesting, and some of the spirit of what they were trying to capture with the Spanish Civil War was really impressive. So, again, back and forth.
You like Hemingway in general?
I'm okay with Hemingway. I don't dislike Hemingway.
Do you agree? How do you feel about that comment that I made about the audience, the CMS audiences of 2014 voting Katina Paxanu probably, the best supporting actress of 2014?
I mean, I don't know who else she was up against, but I think that her performance definitely stood out. It was definitely a very strong performance, and afterwards I looked it up for her to see what else she'd been in. When I saw that she had gotten an award for this, I was like, yes, that's good. She should definitely get an award for this. So.
And Akeem Tamaroff was also nominated. It's funny, they get a Greek actress, a Russian actress, a Greek actress, a Russian actor, and a Swedish actress to play the Spanish people in the movie.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much of it was Technicolor versus the actual makeup they had in these people, but in the print that I saw, they looked awful. I mean, they looked like ridiculous stereotypes of Spanish, characters. And I'm sure it wouldn't have been nearly as obvious to people at the time, but from our perspective now, it was distracting. It was a really distracting problem with this movie.
Well, I'm gonna hold off my comments until I reveal the winner here. Well, actually, you didn't vote yet. Who would you?
I didn't vote.
Who would you have picked?
Between these two movies, I probably would end up going with Johnny Belinda, just because I think ultimately I probably enjoyed watching it more, and because I think that it certainly visually had more to offer for me personally, and because I think it's probably just a more important movie in a certain way. So.
And you're doing feedbacky. I don't know if that's Davy Joe playing with his sound again. So yeah, I had screened For Whom the Bell Tolls in I think it was November of 2014. So anyway, here's the winner. And just like you had said, Johnny Belinda wins. And quite frankly, the audience for Whom the Bell Tolls was much harder on it than you were, or Johnny Belinda. And I own that movie too, and they actually raked across the coals. We all sort of thought Gary Cooper was really awkward. Like, you were nice about it. And I very rarely like Gary Cooper. I think he actually stands out like a sore thumb amongst his contemporaries in terms of acting ability. I actually didn't like Ingrid Bergman here. Maybe I'm just offended that she was nominated for this instead of Casablanca.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that another time, perhaps. But I did like Katina Paxanu and Akeem Tamaroff. They for me saved the movie, and their relationship I think was the most interesting. And the other thing about the movie is anticlimactic too. I mean, it was sort of I felt like it was building up to some action, and it was more not really much action at all.
You don't feel like the end was full of that? I guess I felt like the end was actually really action intensive.
I mean, short of, I just felt like I don't know, maybe it's expectations. I overall I was disappointed. There was some interesting. It's some of Sam Wood's best direction, and that's not saying much. Sam Wood is notoriously weak, I think. Again, compared to his contemporaries. But I'm agreeing with this pick, Johnny Belinda. I'm mostly a fan. I like Davy Joe. I think it's a good movie, and with some flaws, but definitely better than For Whom the Bell Tolls. For Whom the Bell Tolls is a higher seed, incidentally, because it did really well at the box office, and it had that Hemingway pedigree, for a number of years. Johnny Belinda, a little bit swept under the carpet, as far as the 40s is concerned, but hopefully maybe after this screening, it'll get a little more attention. All right, so we have a very good shot at being on time here, guys. Let's see what's happening next. All right, I gotta get. Oh, it's time for the tidbits. So, are you guys cool with moving on? Did you have anything you wanted to say about the Johnny Belinda winning? J Money?
Nope. Good for Johnny B. Good for JB. That's what I was gonna say.
I like what you did there. I like that.
You know who else won? The Phillies. The Phillies beat the Cubs.
Hot off the presses, ladies and gentlemen. You got the update. Phillies beat the Cubs. Cubs won their 40th game last night. And before it's funny, you brought it up now, so I'm going to say it now. I was going to say it in the sound off. But as most of you know, we are building up towards our next year in review show next February. We're going to, obviously do our Oscar preview, our top 10, but also instead of doing a 1991 in review, we're going to do 1966 in review. And today, 50 years ago, today, in 1966, was the Major League draft, the Major League Baseball draft. And Reggie Jackson was drafted today, 50 years ago, but he was drafted second overall, very famously, supposed to be first, but went second to the Kansas City Athletics instead of first to the New York Mets. The New York Mets picked a guy by the name of Steve Chilcott, a catcher who never actually played in the major leagues because right after being drafted by the Major League Baseball, one of the things Major League Baseball made you do is they made you go to the ROTC for a time before reporting to training camp, and he actually injured himself so badly in the ROTC he never got to play baseball. So the Mets could have had Reggie Jackson and did not 50 years ago today, and I thought Davey would appreciate that. Davey?
Wow. I not heard that.
I was going to bring up the sound up, but you brought up baseball, so just
there you go. Fine.
Time to talk about next week's films. Next week's classic. So here's your trivia for next week. Let me just check what it is. Okay. So I talked about earlier when we started tonight. I said, well, we had screened Johnny Belinda as a part of the Oscar movie marathon that we do. We screened that in the 2008 Oscar movie marathon. In episode 26.3, we talked about Goodfellas, which we had screened at this year's Oscar movie marathon, which we had this past February for the films related to 2015. Next week's classic is another film we screened at this year's Oscar movie marathon. That's your tidbit, and you have to go back to previous episodes because I announced the 5 films we screened at this year's Oscar movie marathon at one of the sound-offs. So if you watch those sound-offs, you can find out what potentially next week's classic is going to be. Did I cover all? I did. Next time it's time for the sound-off coming up in about 5 minutes, maybe a little bit later. I got to get close to see what time it is. Anyway, sound off. Davey is apparently going to talk about some comic book stuff. He's going to talk about the state of the comic book industry. We're going to talk about some of the things you're telling me you're watching on Twitter. We're going to answer one of your Twitter questions. I'm going to talk about a movie that has come up in our discussions of films from 1990. We did that whole 1990 review show back in February. And I'm going to also talk, since Johnny Belinda, the Best Actress Oscar 1948, I'm going to list my top 5 best actress winners. Sound off. Our freeform segment coming up next. We'll see you then as Sexy Pirate Night continues.